Babysitting is supposed to be one of the easiest jobs. You show up, you feed the kids, maybe watch a movie and get paid to chill. But for some people, that night of easy money turned into something much, much darker. Tonight, I've got two terrifying real babysitting stories that were shared by people who will never babysit again. These aren't just urban legends or creepypasta. These are first-hand accounts that'll make you think twice before agreeing to watch someone's kids alone. If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more weekly chills, and let me know in the comments, would you have stayed in that house? Let's begin. Our first story takes us to a quiet suburban street, much like any other. It was here that a young woman named Julia found herself watching over 8-year-old twins, Emily and Ethan. The parents, a friendly couple named the Millers, seemed normal enough. They left detailed instructions, a fridge full of snacks, and promised to be back before midnight. Easy, right? The evening started out without a hitch. Sarah helped the twins finish their homework, played board games, and even managed to get them into bed by 8:30. It was shaping up to be a surprisingly uneventful night. As she settled down on the couch to watch some TV, Sarah felt a pang of unease. Maybe it was the way the shadows seemed to stretch from the corners of the room, or the way the old house creaked and groaned around her. Whatever it was, a feeling of being watched crept up her spine. She brushed it off, attributing it to her imagination and the countless horror movies she'd watched. To shake off the feeling, she got up and checked on the twins. Emily was fast asleep, her blonde curls spread across the pillow. Ethan, however, was sitting up in bed, his eyes wide with fear. "What's wrong, Ethan?" Sarah asked softly, kneeling beside the bed. "There's a man in the hallway," he whispered, his voice trembling. "He's just standing there watching me." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She strained to listen but could only hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. "There's no one there, sweetie," she reassured him, forcing a smile. "It was probably just a bad dream." Ethan shook his head, his small hand clutching her arm. "No, he's real. He's tall and has a hat. And his eyes, they're like holes." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. She quickly checked the hallway, her pulse quickening. It was empty. The only light came from the night light in the twins' room, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. "See," she said, trying to sound calm. "There's nothing to be scared of." She tucked Ethan back into bed, promising to leave the door open a crack. Back in the living room, Sarah tried to ignore the growing sense of dread. She kept glancing at the hallway, half expecting to see a shadowy figure emerge from the darkness. The grandfather clock chimed 10 times, each chime echoing in the silence like a hammer blow to her nerves. Unable to shake off the feeling of unease, she decided to call the Millers, just to check in, to calm her nerves. But as she reached for her phone, the power went out. The house plunged into darkness, the only sound her own ragged breathing. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the darkness. It came from Emily's room. Sarah scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest. She fumbled for her phone, using its dim light to guide her way through the darkened house. As she reached the twins' room, she saw him, a tall figure silhouetted in the doorway, his back to her. He was leaning over Emily's bed, his hand outstretched. "Get away from her!" Sarah screamed, charging into the room. But as she got closer, the figure turned and the phone slipped from her grasp, clattering to the floor. The shadowy figure had no face, just smooth, featureless skin where his eyes, nose and mouth should have been. Sarah stumbled back, fear paralyzing her. The faceless man turned back to Emily, and for a moment everything was silent. Then a low, guttural voice filled with malice echoed through the room. "You shouldn't be here!" Sarah's scream died in her throat as the faceless man lunged at her, his shadowy hand reaching out. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the worst, but it never came. When she dared to open her eyes, the room was empty. Our next story takes us to a sprawling Victorian mansion perched atop a windswept hill. It was here that a college student named Ben took a summer job, hoping to earn some extra cash before the semester began. He had heard whispers about the old Blackwood Manor, tales of strange occurrences and unexplained noises, but he dismissed them as mere local folklore. The Blackwood family, an elderly couple with a penchant for antiques and solitude, seemed harmless enough. They warned Ben about wandering the house, particularly the top floor, which they explained was used for storage and off-limits. But their warnings were less about safety and more about respecting their privacy. The first few weeks were uneventful. Ben spent his days tending the gardens, dusting Mr. Blackwood's vast library, and making sure Mrs. Blackwood's countless cats were fed and content. But as the days turned into weeks, a sense of unease began to settle over Ben. It started subtly. The feeling of being watched while he worked, the sound of footsteps echoing from the empty halls above, the faint scent of lavender perfume lingering in the air, even though Mrs. Blackwood favoured rosewater. Then the dreams began. Vivid, unsettling dreams of a young girl with sad eyes and a porcelain doll clutched tightly in her hand. The girl would appear in his dreams, her voice a mournful whisper, pleading for someone to find her doll. Ben tried to shake off the dreams, but they became more frequent, more intense, bleeding into his waking hours. One afternoon, while dusting the library, Ben noticed a loose floorboard creaking beneath his feet. Curiosity getting the better of him, he pried it open, revealing a small, dusty box hidden beneath. Inside, nestled in faded velvet lining, was a beautiful porcelain doll. Its eyes, once a vibrant blue, were now dull and lifeless, staring blankly ahead. The doll's resemblance to the one in his dreams was uncanny. A shiver ran down Ben's spine as he picked it up, a strange energy seeming to emanate from its cold porcelain skin. He couldn't explain it, but he felt compelled to find out more about the doll and the mysterious girl in his dreams. That night, unable to resist the pull of the unknown, Ben ventured upstairs. The hallway was dark, lit only by the sliver of moonlight filtering in through the dusty windows. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the silence was heavy, oppressive. He crept down the hallway, his hand trailing along the wall, each creaking floorboard sending shivers down his spine. At the end of the hallway he found it, a door, slightly ajar, that seemed out of place amongst the other, more ornate doors lining the hallway. It was a plain wooden door, unvarnished and weathered with time. He'd never noticed it before, almost as if it had materialized from thin air. A sense of foreboding washed over him, a voice in the back of his mind screaming at him to turn back. But curiosity, like a siren's call, drew him closer. He pushed the door open slowly, wincing at the ear-splitting shriek of rusty hinges. The room was small and sparsely furnished, illuminated only by the sliver of moonlight from the hallway. Dust caked every surface, cobwebs hung from the rafters like macabre decorations, and the air was heavy with the weight of forgotten years. In the centre of the room stood a child's bed, its once brightly coloured quilt now faded and threadbare. A chill ran down Ben's spine as he noticed a small wooden rocking horse tucked neatly beside the bed, its painted eyes seeming to follow his every move. As he took a step closer, a cold gust of wind slammed the door shut with a deafening bang. Ben jumped back, his heart pounding in his chest. He fumbled for the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. He was trapped. Panic surged through him as he rattled the doorknob, but the door wouldn't give. He was a prisoner in the forgotten room, the air growing colder, the shadows seeming to twist and writhe around him. Then he heard it. A soft, childlike giggle that echoed through the room, sending shivers down his spine. He spun around, searching for the source of the sound, but the room was empty. He was alone, yet he felt a presence, cold and unseen, watching him from the shadows. Suddenly, The rocking horse began to move, slowly at first, then faster and faster, its wooden hooves clattering against the wooden floor. A high-pitched, mournful wail, filled with an unimaginable sadness, seemed to seep from the walls themselves, driving Ben to his knees, his hands covering his ears. He squeezed his eyes shut, willing himself to wake up from the nightmare. The room grew colder, the air thick with a palpable sense of despair. He could feel eyes on him, unseen eyes watching his every move, and the feeling sent chills crawling down his spine. Just when he thought he could take no more, the rocking horse stopped abruptly. The wailing ceased. The room was plunged into an eerie silence that was somehow more terrifying than the noise. Some doors are locked for a reason, and some voices aren't meant to be answered.